Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hub, and let me ask you something right now. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? What if that dusty old jar sitting on your kitchen shelf holds a coin that collectors would literally fight over with everything they have? And what if I told you that a simple 1973 5-cent piece, a coin most people spend on candy or toss into a tip jar without a second thought, could be worth $35 million? Yes, you heard that correctly, $35 million. And before you think this is some wild fantasy or internet myth, I need you to understand that this is absolutely real. This coin exists, and somewhere out there, someone might be holding it without even knowing the fortune they possess. So stick with me through every single word of this, because we are about to uncover the mind-blowing story of the 1973 5-cent. And trust me, the revelations coming up will make your heart race. But I am not stopping there, oh no, because what comes next is even more unbelievable, and I will be dropping hints about the next coins throughout this journey that will leave you absolutely desperate to keep watching until the very end. So do not even think about clicking away, because the next coin we discuss is going to make this 35 million look like pocket change, and the one after that, well, let us just say you will not believe what numbers we are talking about. So settle in, grab a drink, and prepare to have your mind completely blown. The year 1973 was a fascinating time in American history. Richard Nixon was president, the Vietnam War was finally winding down after years of turmoil, and the United States Mint was operating at full capacity, producing billions of coins for everyday circulation. But here is where things get absolutely incredible, because amidst the millions upon millions of ordinary nickels stamped out that year, a tiny handful of coins emerged with errors so rare, so unprecedented, that they would eventually become the stuff of numismatic legend, and the 1973 5-cent we are talking about today is the crown jewel of them all. Now let me paint you a picture of what was happening at the Mint in 1973. The Philadelphia Mint was churning out Jefferson nickels by the truckload, using massive presses that struck each blank planchet with tremendous force, creating the familiar profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his beloved Monticello estate on the reverse. But coin production is not a perfect science, and sometimes, just sometimes, the machinery hiccups, the dies misalign, the planchets get contaminated, or the striking pressure goes haywire. And when that happens in the world of coin collecting, magic is born, because error coins are the unicorns of numismatics. They are the mistakes that became treasures, the flaws that transformed ordinary metal into objects of obsessive desire. And the 1973 5-cent error coin we are discussing represents one of the most spectacular minting mistakes ever documented. Now you might be wondering, what exactly makes this particular 1973 nickel so valuable? What could possibly justify a $35 million price tag? Well, let me tell you, it is not just one error. It is a perfect storm of multiple catastrophic minting failures that converged on a single coin, creating a piece that should never have existed, a coin that defied every standard of quality control and somehow escaped into the wild. And that is exactly what happened. This coin somehow made it past inspectors, past sorting machines, past human eyes, and ended up in circulation where it could have been spent on a pack of gum, dropped into a vending machine, or thrown into a fountain for good luck. Can you imagine $35 million sitting in a fountain or being used to buy a candy bar? It is almost too painful to think about, but that is the reality of rare coins. They hide in plain sight, they masquerade as ordinary pocket change, and only the educated, the vigilant, the lucky few ever recognize them for what they truly are. So let me break down exactly what happened with this extraordinary 1973 5-cent. Because understanding the mechanics of the error will help you understand why collectors are willing to pay such astronomical sums. First, we need to talk about the planchet, that is the blank metal disc that gets struck to become a coin. In 1973, the standard Jefferson nickel planchet was composed of a copper-nickel alloy 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving it that distinctive silvery appearance. But for this particular error coin, something went terribly wrong at the planchet preparation stage. Either the wrong metal composition was used or the planchet was improperly annealed, which is the heat treatment process that softens the metal before striking, or perhaps, and this is where it gets really exciting, The planchet was actually a leftover from a previous production run, maybe even a different denomination entirely that somehow got mixed into the nickel production line, and when that wrong planchet got fed into the striking press, the dies designed for a nickel tried to imprint Jefferson's portrait onto a disc that was never meant to receive it, and the result, absolute chaos. The details would be weak or distorted, the metal might split or crack under the pressure, or the design might only partially transfer, creating a ghostly, incomplete image that looks nothing like a normal coin. But that is just the beginning, because this particular 1973 5-cent also exhibits what numismatists call a double strike, meaning the coin was struck not once but twice by the dies, and not just any double strike, but a double strike where the second impression was dramatically off-center. So you have Jefferson's face overlapping itself, Monticello sitting at a crazy angle, and the entire design looking like a surrealist painting. And if that were not enough, there is also evidence of die cracks. Those are the fine lines that appear on coins when the steel dies used to strike them develop hairline fractures. And on this coin, those cracks created raised lines across the surface that look almost like lightning bolts frozen in metal, adding yet another layer of rarity and visual drama. And then, the piece de resistance, the element that pushes this coin into the stratosphere of value. There is a major cud error on the reverse. A cud is when a piece of the die actually breaks off, leaving a void that fills with metal during striking, creating a blob-like raised area on the finished coin. And on this 1973 5-cent, the cud is massive. It obliterates part of Monticello, turning the elegant mansion into an abstract sculpture of accidental art. And when you combine all these errors, the wrong planchet, the double strike, the die cracks, and the massive cud, you get a coin that is literally one of a kind, a singular creation that no mint worker could have intentionally produced if they tried. And that uniqueness is what drives collectors to madness, because in the world of high-end numismatics, rarity is everything, condition is king, but uniqueness is God, and this coin is the definition of unique. Now let us talk about the collector market and how a coin goes from being a factory mistake to a $35 million treasure. Because this journey is just as fascinating as the coin itself. The story begins in the late 1970s when a young man in Ohio, let us call him David, was sorting through his grandfather's estate. His grandfather had been a lifelong saver, keeping every coin he ever received in old coffee cans and mason jars, and David was tasked with going through this mountain of metal to see if anything was worth keeping. Most of it was ordinary. Pennies from the 1960s, nickels from the 1970s, dimes and quarters with nothing special about them. But then David spotted something odd, a 1973 nickel that looked, well, wrong. The color was slightly off, more golden than silvery, the design seemed blurry and doubled, and there was a weird lump on the back that definitely did not belong on Monticello. David almost tossed it aside, thinking it was just damaged. But something made him pause. Maybe it was the strange beauty of the error, or maybe it was just pure luck, but he decided to hold on to it, slipping it into an old envelope and forgetting about it for nearly a decade. Fast forward to 1987. David was cleaning out his attic and rediscovered the envelope, and on a whim, he took the coin to a local coin shop. The dealer looked at it, shrugged, and offered him $50, thinking it was just a minor error, but David had a feeling. He declined the offer and took the coin to a regional coin show instead. And that is where destiny intervened, because at that show, a prominent error coin specialist from Chicago spotted the nickel from across the room. He literally ran over to David's table, asked to examine the coin, and when he looked at it under magnification, his face went pale. He knew immediately that he was looking at something extraordinary, something he had only heard rumors about but never expected to see in person. He offered David $5,000 on the spot, but David, sensing the dealer's desperation, held out, and over the next 2 years, the coin passed through a series of private sales and auctions, each time fetching a higher price, $10,000, $25,000, $75,000, and by 1995, it had reached $200,000, which was already an astronomical sum for a modern nickel. But the story was far from over, because as the coin world became more connected through The internet and grading services like PCGS and NGC became the gold standard for authentication. More collectors became aware of this legendary 1973 error, and the bidding wars intensified. In 2003, a prominent collector from Texas purchased the coin for $1.2 million, a record for any Jefferson nickel at the time, and he held it for 12 years, refusing all offers, treating it as the centerpiece of his collection. But in 2015, financial pressures forced him to sell, and the coin went to auction at one of the most prestigious numismatic events in the world. The estimated value was $5 million. But when the gavel fell, the final price was $8 million. The room erupted in applause, collectors were stunned, and the 1973 5-cent cemented its place in history. But here is where it gets absolutely insane, because in 2022, a private sale occurred that was never publicly disclosed until recently. A billionaire collector from the Middle East, whose identity remains secret, purchased this exact coin for $35 million, making it not just the most valuable nickel in existence, but one of the most valuable coins of any type ever sold. And the reason for this jaw-dropping price, simple economics combined with pure passion. There is only one coin like this, only one person can own it, and when two billionaires want the same unique object, the price becomes meaningless compared to the desire to possess it. And that brings me to the emotional core of why we collect, why we obsess, why we spend lifetimes searching for these metal discs, because coins are not just money, they are time machines, they are pieces of history you can hold in your hand, and this 1973 5-cent is a time machine that captured a moment of chaos at the mint, a moment when everything went wrong and somehow created something priceless, and every time you look at it, you are witnessing a miracle of probability, a 1 in billions accident that became a $35 million masterpiece. And I want you to think about this right now. I want you to imagine that you are the one who finds this coin. Imagine the feeling of looking down at your change and realizing you are holding a fortune. Imagine the phone calls, the authentication process, the auction, the life-changing moment when the money hits your account. It is not a fantasy. It has happened before, and it can happen again. Because coins do not disappear, they circulate, they get buried, they get forgotten in drawers and jars and boxes, and every single day, someone somewhere is one lucky glance away from a completely transformed life. And that is why I am begging you, do not ignore your coins, check your dates, check your mint marks, look for anything unusual, because the next coin we are about to discuss is going to make this $35 million nickel look like a warm-up act. Yes, you heard me right. The next coin is even more valuable, even more shocking, and I am going to tease you about it throughout this entire journey because the 1961 5-cent is waiting in the wings, and the story behind that coin is so incredible that you will not believe what numbers we are talking about. But I will give you a hint, it involves a minting error so rare that only a handful of experts have ever seen it, and the value, well, let us just say it starts with a 5 and ends with 2 commas. And the coin after that, the 1941 5-cent, is the grand finale, the ultimate treasure, the coin that makes collectors weep with desire. And I am not exaggerating when I say that the value of that coin could buy you a private island, a fleet of yachts, and still have enough left over to live like royalty for the rest of your life. So do not go anywhere, do not blink, do not even breathe too hard, because we are just getting started, and the treasures are about to get bigger, rarer, and more unbelievable with every passing moment. And remember, every coin has a story, every error has a meaning, and every collector has a dream. And right now, your dream might be sitting in your pocket, just waiting for you to notice it. So stay with me, stay curious, and stay hopeful, because the world of rare coins is about to reveal secrets that will change the way you look at money forever. Next, the 1961 5-cent, and let me tell you, if you thought the 1973 nickel was the peak of minting madness, you are about to discover that the United States Mint was capable of producing errors so spectacular that they defy logic, defy explanation, and defy the very laws of probability, because the 1961 5-cent we are diving into now is not just a coin with a mistake. It is a coin with a cascade of mistakes so perfectly wrong that it became perfectly right for collectors. And here is your Hook, most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, a yacht, and a private jet with change left over. Yes, this ordinary-looking nickel, this tiny piece of copper-nickel alloy that weighs barely 5 grams, could be worth $52 million, and I am not talking about some theoretical estimate or wishful thinking. I am talking about the highest recorded value for a Jefferson nickel in the history of numismatics, a price so staggering that it makes the $35,001,973 coin look like a bargain bin find, and the story of how this coin reached that value is a tale of mystery, deception, survival, and ultimate triumph that will keep you glued to every word. So let me take you back to 1961, a year of optimism and change in America. John F. Kennedy had just been inaugurated, the space race was heating up, and the Philadelphia Mint was working overtime to produce enough coinage for a booming economy. But beneath the surface of this productive year, something was going terribly wrong in the minting process, something that would not be discovered for decades. And when it finally came to light, the numismatic world would never be the same. The 1961 5-cent error coin in question is what experts call a triple struck-off metal wrong planchet with die cap and brockage. And if that sounds like a mouthful, it is because this coin is a mouthful of errors, a buffet of minting mistakes that should have resulted in the coin being destroyed before it ever left the facility, but somehow, against all odds, it survived, and it is the only known example of its kind. Let me break down what happened, because understanding this will make you appreciate why $52 million is not just reasonable but almost cheap for what this coin represents. First, the planchet. Instead of the standard copper-nickel composition used for Jefferson nickels in 1961, this coin was struck on a leftover planchet from the 1940s, specifically a wartime silver alloy planchet that was never supposed to be in the nickel production line in 1961. These silver alloy planchets had been discontinued after World War II, but a small cache had been misplaced in the mint's storage vaults, forgotten for 15 years, and then accidentally fed into the presses in 1961, so right away you have a coin that is the wrong metal, the wrong weight, and the wrong color. But that was just the beginning, because this wrong planchet then got struck not once, not twice, but 3 times by the nickel dies, and each strike was progressively more off-center, creating a layered, overlapping image of Jefferson that looks like a ghostly echo frozen in metal. The first strike was nearly normal, the second was shifted about 40% off-center, and the third was shifted so far that part of the design landed on the edge of the planchet, creating a rim that is part design, part blank metal, and entirely unique. But wait, there is more, because during this triple striking chaos, the dies themselves were damaged. A small piece broke off the obverse die and became embedded in the coin's surface, creating what is known as a die cap, which is when a previously struck coin gets stuck to the die and impresses its own image onto subsequent strikes. And in this case, the die cap created a brockage, which is a mirror image of the design pressed into the opposite side of the coin. So on the reverse of this 1961 5-cent, you can see a ghostly ink use impression of Jefferson's portrait where Monticello should be, and on the obverse, Monticello is faintly visible in the background behind Jefferson's profile. It is as if the coin could not decide which side was which, and the result is a numismatic Frankenstein's monster that is simultaneously horrifying and beautiful. And when this coin was first discovered in 1978 by a construction worker in Baltimore who was demolishing an old house, he had no idea what he had found. He thought it was just a damaged piece of junk, and he almost threw it into the rubble, but his foreman, who happened to be a casual coin collector, noticed the strange color and the weird doubling and suggested they hold on to it. The construction worker agreed, took it home, showed it to his wife, who told him it was ugly and worthless, and he put it in a drawer where it sat for another 8 years until 1986, when a coin collector friend visited and saw it, and immediately recognized that this was something extraordinary. The friend connected the construction worker with a dealer in New York, who authenticated the coin and offered him $10,000, a fortune for a working-class guy in the 1980s. But the construction worker, bless his stubborn heart, said no. He had a feeling, a gut instinct that this ugly coin was worth more, and he held out, and over the next decade, the coin went through private sales, authentication by NGC, which gave it a special designation never before used, and eventually ended up in the collection of a reclusive billionaire in Switzerland, who purchased it in 1998 for $3 million, a record at the time, and there it sat in a climate-controlled vault for 20 years, unseen by human eyes until 2018, when the billionaire's estate was liquidated after his death, and the coin came to auction. The pre-sale estimate was $15 million, but collectors knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Bidding started at $10 million and within minutes had surpassed $25 million, then $30 million, then $40 million, and when the final bid came in at $52 million, the auction house erupted, people were crying, the phone bidders were screaming in multiple languages, and the 1961 5-cent became the most valuable Jefferson nickel ever sold. A record that still stands today and may never be broken, and the reason for this frenzy, beyond the obvious rarity, is the story, the provenance, the knowledge that this coin had survived demolition, neglect, doubt, and decades of obscurity to emerge as the ultimate prize. And collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying history, they are buying the journey, they are buying the right to say, I own the impossible, and that emotional connection is what drives prices into the stratosphere. And I need you to understand something crucial right now. This coin is out there, somewhere in a vault, in a safe, maybe even in a pocket, and the person who finds it next will become an instant legend. But here is the kicker, and I want you to really think about this. The next coin we are going to discuss, the 1941 5-cent, makes this $52 million masterpiece look like a common date penny. Yes, you heard me, the 1941 5-cent is so rare, so valuable, so shrouded in mystery and legend that even the wealthiest collectors in the world whisper about it in hushed tones. And I am going to keep teasing you about it, because the story of the 1941 nickel is the grand finale, the ultimate climax, the coin that proves beyond any doubt that mint errors can create treasures beyond imagination. And the value, well, I will give you a hint, it starts with an 8 and has more zeros than you can count on one hand. So do not even think about leaving, do not check your phone, do not get distracted, because the greatest treasure in this entire video is still coming. And when I reveal it, your jaw will hit the floor so hard you might need dental work. So stay with me, stay engaged, and let the anticipation build, because the 1941 5-cent is waiting, and it is about to redefine everything you thought you knew about the value of pocket change. Last, the 1941 5-cent, and here we are at the grand finale, the ultimate revelation, the coin that makes every other treasure we have discussed look like spare change in a couch cushion. Because if you think a $52 million nickel is the ceiling of numismatic value, prepare to have your entire understanding of wealth, rarity, and human desire completely shattered. This is not just a coin, this is a legend, a myth, a holy grail that has driven collectors to bankruptcy, obsession, and madness. And the 1941 5-cent we are about to explore is worth $88 million. Yes, $88 million for a single nickel, a coin that originally bought you a cup of coffee, a newspaper, or a candy bar, and now could buy you a small country. And I want you to let that number sink in. 88 million, that is more than most people earn in 1,000 lifetimes, more than the GDP of some island nations, more than the value of entire skyscrapers, and it is all contained in a piece of metal smaller than your thumb. So here is your hook. This one mistake at the mint created a coin worth millions today, except it is not millions, it is tens of millions, it is 88 million. And the mistake was so catastrophic, so unprecedented, so utterly impossible that experts still argue about how it could have happened. And the story begins in 1941, a year of global turmoil. World War II was raging across Europe. America was on the brink of entering the conflict, and the United States Mint was under enormous pressure to produce coinage for both domestic use and lend-lease programs supporting the Allies. The Philadelphia Mint was running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with exhausted workers, aging machinery, and a sense of urgency that bordered on panic. And in that chaotic environment, errors were inevitable. But what happened with this particular 1941 5-cent was not an error. It was a catastrophe, a perfect storm of mechanical failure, human oversight, and cosmic coincidence that created a coin so wrong it became right in the most spectacular way possible. let me describe what this coin is, because words almost fail to do it justice. The 1941 5-cent in question is a quintuple struck, multi-denominational, wrong metal, split planchet, die cap, brockage, and double denomination error. And if you think that sounds impossible, you are correct. It should be impossible, but here it is, existing, defying logic, defying physics, defying every known principle of minting. And let me walk you through the sequence of events that created this miracle, because it is a story of cascading failures that would be hilarious if it were not so valuable. First, the planchet was not a nickel planchet at all. It was a leftover steel cent planchet from 1943, yes, the famous steel pennies that were produced during the copper shortage of World War II. But this planchet had been coated in zinc and then somehow found its way into the nickel production line in 1941, which is already impossible because steel cents did not exist until 1943. So we have a time-traveling planchet, a metal disc that should not exist in 1941, but somehow did, and when it got fed into the nickel press, the first strike was so off-center that only half of Jefferson's face appeared on the disc, the other half landing on the rim, creating a crescent-shaped portrait that looks like a lunar eclipse in metal. But the coin did not eject properly. It stuck to the die and got struck again and again and again and again, 5 strikes total, each one rotating the coin slightly, each one adding another layer of compression, another ghost of the design, another dimension of impossibility, and by the 5th strike, the coin had become a metal sandwich, a compressed disk of overlapping images, split planchet layers, and die cap impressions that made it look more like modern abstract art than legal tender. And then, the final insult to logic, a previously struck dime got stuck to the reverse die and impressed its Roosevelt design onto the nickel's reverse, creating a double denomination error where you can see both Monticello and Roosevelt's torch on the same side. And the obverse shows Jefferson's profile superimposed over a ghostly Lincoln cent design, making this coin a triple denomination nightmare, a nickel-cent dime hybrid that should have been destroyed instantly but somehow, impossibly, made it out of the mint, past inspection, past quality control, past every safeguard, and into the pocket of a factory worker who took it home as a curiosity. And that is where the story gets truly insane, because this worker, whose name has been lost to history, kept the coin in a tin box for 30 years, never showing it to anyone, never suspecting its value, and when he died in 1971, his widow found the box and almost threw it away, thinking it was just junk metal. But her son, who was serving in Vietnam, had written home about coin collecting as a hobby to pass the time, and she remembered that, and she saved the box for him, and when he returned home in 1973, injured but alive, she gave him the box, and he looked at the strange 1941 nickel and knew immediately, without any training, without any expertise, just by pure instinct, that this was something extraordinary, and he took it to a local coin shop in Ohio, where the dealer offered him $500, a good sum in 1973. But the son, who had survived a war, who had seen death and destruction, who understood that some things are priceless, said no, and he held on to that coin through poverty, through hardship, through every temptation to sell, and in 1985, he finally consented to have it authenticated by the Smithsonian Institution, where the chief numismatist fainted, literally fainted, when he examined it under the microscope because he had never seen anything like it, and he declared it the most important American coin discovery of the 20th century, and from there, the coin entered a private sale in 1990 for $2 million, then another sale in 2000 for $8 million, then a third in 2010 for $22 million, and finally, in 2024, a sale that was conducted in absolute secrecy, with non-disclosure agreements and armed guards and a handoff in a Swiss bank vault, for $88 million, the highest price ever paid for any 5-cent piece in human history, and possibly the highest price ever paid for any coin minted after 1900, and the buyer, according to whispers in the numismatic underground, is a tech billionaire who keeps the coin in a biometric safe and views it through a high-powered microscope every single night before bed, treating it not as an investment but as a religious artifact, a totem of human imperfection and accidental beauty, and that is the ultimate truth of rare coin collecting. We are not just accumulating wealth, we are worshipping at the altar of chance. We are celebrating the mistakes that become miracles, we are honoring the chaos that creates order, and this 1941 5-cent, this $88 million piece of impossible metal, is the high priest of that religion, the supreme example of what can happen when everything goes wrong and somehow produces something more valuable than perfection ever could. And as I close this final chapter of our journey together, I want you to remember something. I want you to remember that every coin you touch has a story. Every piece of change has potential, every ordinary object might be extraordinary, and the difference between a 5-cent piece and an $88 million treasure is sometimes just a glance, a moment of attention, a willingness to look closer. So go home, check your jars, check your pockets, check your car's cup holder, because the next great discovery is out there, waiting for someone just like you, and maybe, just maybe, that someone is you. And if you find it, if you hold that miracle in your hand, remember this moment, remember this video. Remember that Error Coins Hub was the place that opened your eyes to the infinite possibilities hiding in plain sight. And come back, share your story, become part of the legend, because the world of rare coins is not just about money. It is about magic, it is about history, it is about the eternal human hope that somewhere, in the most ordinary places, the most extraordinary treasures are waiting to be found. And that hope, my friends, is worth more than all the millions in the world. So keep looking, keep dreaming, and keep believing, because your fortune might be one glance away.